What if Candace Owens is right? Let's talk about it. All right, guys, so everybody, unless you're living under a rock, you know that Candace Owens has a pretty strong opinion about the death of our friend Charlie Kirk. She believes that there are some major evil forces at play. There are some people that are holding back some secrets and some conspiracies, and she's trying to get to the bottom of it. I want to talk about this a little bit because I want us to imagine, what if she's right? What if she's right? Now, we talked about it on the Chad Prather show a little bit about how there are all of these voices of influencers trying to punch through the smoke. And we have to be careful how we allow that loudest voice to sometimes have the main priority place in our lives. You got to be careful with that. Sometimes you just got to be still, wait, and be patient. Use a little discretion. But Candace doesn't seem to be waiting. So she came out yesterday with a show where a lot of people were watching it, and I think there were like 200,000 people watching this thing live. And she had some pretty strong opinions on this, like usual. I mean, that's purely Candace fashion, right? Claims to have some information. Let's just take a little look at some of the things that she had to say, and then we'll go from there. Play the clip.
But I was so clearly deluded in the immediate aftermath of his death that I was operating under this function. I mean, I truly believed that I would be fighting for answers to what actually happened on 9/10 alongside Charlie's inner circle. I thought the band maybe was going to get back together. We were all going to maybe be on a group chat. Me, Tyler Boyer, Andrew Colvett, Stacey Sheridan even. If you're wondering who Stacey Sheridan is, by the way, she's the one who's holding the camera when Charlie's casket is being escorted off of Air Force Two. She's like the chief money person, essentially, at Turning Point USA. She was brought in to reel in the big donors. I remember exactly when that happened. All of those people, by the way, were actually brought in by Tyler Boyer. He's a very important character in the story, but we're going to get into all of that tomorrow. The point that I'm making here is that I had assumed, clearly wrongly, that we'd all maybe be on a group chat communicating, raising hell and demanding answers from the feds, from the police, from the White House even. Certainly, at the very least, pointing out the very many holes in this story.
No,
and if any of us, any one of us.
See, my pushback here on this with Candace would be, what makes you think that you're entitled to get into this deep information that supposedly is being held away from the American public by TPUSA, and that they want to hash this out publicly the way that you are? Not everybody's going to process this in the same way. She thought she was going to get the band back together, and everybody was going to make this big public spectacle out of this in the way that she is doing it on her show. Now, there's nothing that was obligating them to do that, but I want to hear her take on this, and I want us to follow up with that in just a second. Play the clip.
Us had the audacity or the desire to carry on Charlie Kirk's show, that would be the appropriate venue for asking those sorts of questions. But no, I was wrong. Silence. Silence is what we were met with. In fact, I am told that these people believe the official narrative. Lone shooter. No one else involved. Just a crazy guy with too many pronouns in his bio. Hey, 1963 called and they want their narrative back. All that's missing from the story is a grassy knoll, right? Just need a grassy knoll. Anyways, back at headquarters, I am told it's business as usual. And it's kind of giving me like, I don't know, LBJ when he gets sworn in that famous picture. Unfortunately, sworn in. Unfortunately, of course, he's sad in this photo. Gosh, he's obviously not wanting to be the president of the United States. JFK was shot and killed. And now LBJ has to step up, unfortunately. But I got to be honest, I wasn't there. I don't think LBJ was actually that upset. I don't know why. Vibes. The vibes just aren't vibing for me in that picture. But maybe he was. Maybe the truth is that LBJ simply, to use an expression, had his wits about him. And JFK had a plan. Like in the event that he had been horrifically assassinated in front of the world, JFK maybe had a succession plan. Now, if these terms I'm using here sound familiar to you, it's because they should sound familiar. It's the exact terminology that was utilized by Pastor Rob McCoy just 4 days after Charlie was murdered. In front of his congregation, he spoke about Charlie's succession plan that he was somehow privy to. I don't know why, but he knew 4 days later and announced to the world that Charlie indeed had a plan. Take a listen.
Now, hang on.
Everyone's
Let's stop it
worried
right
about the leader.
So you're gonna cause suspicion. Hey guys, we're gonna get right back to the video, but before we do, I want to remind you that when inflation jumps and you hear that the national debt is over $37 trillion, do you ever sit back and think maybe now would be a good time to buy some gold, whether it's a hedge against inflation or peace of mind during global instability, or just sensible diversification? Birch Gold Group has every American covered, where you can be backed by physical gold. They created something special just for our listeners. Until September 30th, if you're a first-time gold buyer, Birch Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 in free metals on qualifying purchases. To claim eligibility and start the process, request an info kit now by texting CHAD, I spell it Chad, to the number 989898. Plus, Birch Gold can help you with an existing IRA or 401k by rolling it over into IRA backed by gold. Folks, you're still eligible for the rebate and free metals up to $10,000. Birch Gold is the only precious metals company that I trust, as do tens of thousands of their customers. A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. So text Chad to 989898. Let our friends over at Birch Gold help you right now. In people's minds, because supposedly you're comparing the death of Charlie Kirk to JFK. Now, I'm with you. I'm with you. There's a lot of things that don't add up. There's a lot of things that it don't make sense. But to assume that certain people are supposed to respond a certain way does not necessarily lend credence to your case. Now, just because something doesn't add up doesn't mean that you have that moment of truth that you're waiting to drop for everyone and expose the massive secret cabal out there that was out to do Charlie in. So I want to just say, you got to be careful again with the voices that you hear. I want to talk about this for a second, because if you want to imagine with me that she's right, that this is one big cover-up, including his pastor, who's going to get up 4 days after his death and talk about a succession plan, you don't know that Charlie didn't have a succession plan. I mean, you're the one who released the text messages of Charlie talking about he may not live to see the end of this revolution. And so what would make us think that he didn't have some kind of a succession plan in place? Maybe they are fulfilling Charlie's final wishes that he had already put out there in a massive way of saying, if something happens to me, here's how I want you to proceed. The idea that somebody owes Candance something, I don't think that's a fair argument. I don't think that that's a discussion. But let's imagine that Candance is right. And there is this massive conspiracy surrounding Charlie's death. It's not random. It's not tragic. It's intentional. And the powers that be, including this pastor here, are out there working overtime to hide it. Now, if that's true, the first thing that would, if we could prove that's true, I think that'd be chaos, because a truth like that, if it finally does crack the surface, and if it's out there, I want it to crack the surface, but it's not going to come quietly. It's going to tear through everything. The media credibility, the government trust, the DOJ, the conservative movement itself. So that machine that pretends to protect us is suddenly going to be exposed for something that it really is, and that's a web of manipulation and power. So I want you to imagine millions of Americans loyal to their institutions. I say that, I sort of say that laughably. But suddenly realizing that one of our own was silenced because he spoke boldly and asked too many questions and refused to play along. I think the ripple effect of that would obviously be enormous. Faith in any leadership, including current leadership in this administration, would collapse. The media narratives would crumble. The justice narratives would go away. The voice that told people to, calm down and move on would become suspect overnight, and that would include, of course, the voices at TPUSA. And Candance herself, if she truly held the smoking gun, which I don't think she does at this point, she would become both a hero, which would be something I guess you could say is positive, but she'd also become a target, because she'd be loved by those of you who crave the truth, but she'd be hated by those who depend on the lie. And if you uncover that, that's dangerous ground. So, obviously she's got to watch every step, every word, because the systems aren't going to surrender the power that easily, and they're going to fight to preserve it. And the darker layer of all of that, even if such a revelation were true, then the question becomes, would people even believe anything anymore? Would they even believe her anymore? And I'll tell you why I say that, because we live in a time where truth has been devalued by 1,000 competing narratives, where every headline is suspect, every influencer is an echo chamber. And the irony is, if Candance were right, I've got a feeling that most people would still dismiss her as crazy because too many other false prophets came before her, and that's the cost of living in a world where trust has been burned to ash. Now, I want to go back and see in this clip to make her case. I want to hear what he had to say. Play the clip.
Leadership of TPUSA. Don't. He was wise enough at 31 to put together a plan for succession. It's very clear what they decided, and they're implementing it now.
Amazing. I mean, amazing. So on September 14th, we were made aware of this succession plan, and I find that to be fascinating. The people who didn't even know Charlie all around the world seem to be fighting harder for him, fighting harder for truth. And it is, in fact, thanks to people on the internet like Sam Parker, James Lee, Ian Carroll, Zeb Boykin.
So they also put together a memorial service within 7 days that had 300,000 people show up and was witnessed by 100 million people worldwide. What's your point, Candance? I mean, if you're right, we're facing two possible futures here. Now, I personally do believe Charlie was smart enough, especially a guy with the wisdom and the foresight who lives with daily death threats, who literally traveled with a security team because of the threats on his life. I think he probably would have a succession plan in place. I don't have a problem with that. What she's saying is that TPUSA wanted to just keep on going because they somehow benefited from Charlie's death. That's at least the way I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong. But there's two possible futures here if Candance is right. One is revolution. People wake up, they demand accountability, they pull back the curtain on the media, the money, the mechanisms that keep citizens divided and distracted. And that's the truth that ignites a movement. It unites people not under a political flag, but under a moral awakening. And I think that's a hopeful outcome. I think that's what we're wanting. But there's a second thing, and that's implosion. Because that's the opposite. The truth fragments us further. Now, that's never a reason not to chase the truth. But now, what will happen, because I've seen it, every faction's going to double down. One side's going to call it a setup. The other's going to call it justice. Trust's going to erode beyond repair. The country fractures not from violence alone, but from disbelief. We lose the shared reality that makes society possible. And I'm talking about those of us from the conservative movement. Either way, truth, when it finally comes, has a cost. It never arrives clean. And that's why we have to be very careful with how we handle it right now, because it's going to drag the filth into the light. So if there is a conspiracy, the end result won't just be a revelation and a revolution. It's going to be a reckoning, not just for politicians and elites, but for all of us who either looked the other way or shouted too soon. Because truth doesn't only expose the guilty, it tests the hearts of the listeners and the ones who are pursuing the truth. So if the world ever finds out that Charlie Kirk's death was part of something deeper, that test is going to come for us all. Are we willing to pull on that thread that unravels that fabric? I think we are. I think we are, but I want you to be careful with it, because what are we going to do with the truth when it's finally undeniable? Are we going to build something righteous from it, or is Candance just going to put on her crown and go off and be the queen of truth for the rest of, eternity? Because again, it's not about Candance. This is not about Candance, contrary to what Candance would like for you to believe, even if she's right. So I pray that we get some discernment and we get some righteous pursuit of the truth here. But at the end of the day, we get still long enough to let wisdom win out, because there is a time with that discernment for things to happen in a certain way. And if we don't do it that way, it's just going to be another war of voices that are all just trying to be right. So I want you to be careful with this, folks. Be careful with this. They're going to keep dripping information out. They're going to keep dripping, and they're going to keep going at it. And this narrative is going to continue to get deeper and deeper in the quagmire. And we may never know the truth. I want you to be careful with all of that. In the meantime, what do I know? I'm just a guy talking to a couple of hundred of you. I don't know. Maybe you're listening. Maybe you're not. But I hope you will. Critical thinking wins the day every single time. All right, guys, make sure you leave a little comment down below. I'd love to know what you think. Are we on the verge of a revolution or an implosion? Is Candance right? Is Candance wrong? What do you think? I would want to hear from you. Leave a comment down below. Also, come see us on the Chad Prather Show, Monday through Thursday, 11:10 a.m. Central. We're live on Rumble, YouTube, all the places. Check us out where podcasts are offered. Leave a rating review. And in the meantime, let's keep pursuing the truth. I love y'all. God bless. Talk to you then. Bye.